Yeah. Welcome you.
What is it exactly that you do here at UNICEF?
I am called the Chief of the Communication, Advocacy, Participation and Partnerships team here at UNICEF Mozambique. And basically this is a team that provides support to the major programs, all of the programs of UNICEF. We have a program in education, for example, in child protection, in health and nutrition, etc. And we make sure that those programs have support in terms of activities that we call communication for development. These are activities in communities across the country where we work at different levels, right to the grassroots level, more generally at provincial level, and some programs at a national scale, ensuring that they have support in terms of behavior change communication, social change communication, social mobilization, basically efforts to ensure that families, mothers, caregivers, youth, children, whoever we're trying to communicate with, have an understanding of the types of actions that they might need to take to live a better life, to save the lives of infants and children, to improve the quality of life and the health of mothers and pregnant women, that youth protect themselves from HIV and AIDS, that kind of a thing. We also support the role and right of young people and children to participate in activities in the community, in the decision-making processes that are taking place at different levels, to adopt and implement programs that affect their lives, ensuring that they have a voice, that they're heard, that their opinions are sought and listened to. We support also with UNICEF's communication with the outside world, its communication with its partners, its donors, that everybody knows what we're doing, what the results of our work is, what our challenges are, so that we're able to have an appropriate level of visibility to ensure our credibility, to ensure that resources and money comes into the program. And we work on partnerships with civil society, with NGOs, with organizations at different levels to ensure that they have the capacity to do play the roles that they need to play from their side in partnership with UNICEF, with the private sector to ensure that businesses are thinking about the rights of the child and are socially responsible and know the ways that they might be able to support the work that the government does, that UNICEF does. And a whole bunch of other things around those areas of communication, partnerships, and so on.
And according to you, what makes a good advertising campaign? Like, what are some factors that are essential to having a good one?
A good advertising campaign. Well, what we say in communication, you always think very, very deeply about three things: your message, your audience, and the messenger or the channels of communication. I think a fourth variable there that's also important is time. Sometimes, depending on what it is that you're selling, if you're advertising, or what it is that you're promoting, if you're a social campaign or a government campaign or UNICEF campaign, it takes time to adopt it. It takes time for people to think about it, consider it, and change their behaviors or their attitudes or understand this new concept. And those are sometimes, very cultural things that are very deep-seated in a community, like your attitude towards women and girls in a community, gender relationships, power relationships, your attitude towards kids. So if you're a society that believes children should be seen, not heard, they don't have a voice, it'll take time to sort of adopt the appropriate type of attitude that allows you to engage in a meaningful way with children. So you want to think about those things very, very clearly: your message, audience, and your messenger. And then look at the appropriate mix of strategies and tactics that will allow you to reach that audience with the appropriate messengers and channels to make sure that your message is heard and adopted. So that might be analyzing and seeing who has access to television and radio, mass media, which is usually cost effective. You reach a lot of people for a smaller investment. We look at mid-media strategies, what we call mid-media, which is working with things like community theater or community radio, which reaches a number of people at the same time, but is more focused on a smaller region because the transmission is smaller, or you're dependent on an audience that gathers in a place. And then we look at what is probably the best way to communicate, which is interpersonal communication or one-on-one communication.
Yeah.
But that's really expensive because you need to send someone to
go
each
there,
home and to be there and so on. So we look at the appropriate mix of strategies. And I think the next thing always is to test your assumptions or pre-test your materials, have focus group discussions, interviews to say, look, we're thinking of a campaign like this, a TV spot like this, posters like this, and test it with your audience and get the sort of data that will help you refine it, retune it if necessary, or then go to scale with it. So I think those are some of the key elements in a successful campaign.
And what kind of media is best to use? Is it between like videos, pictures, posters? In like an advertising campaign, is it better to have many or just focus on one?
It really depends on who you're trying to reach and where, and then obviously the other thing that's important is your budget. So if you're trying to reach urban youth in Mozambique, for example, and urban affluent youth, like middle class youth, then it's safe to say that a lot of them have access to the internet, they're educated, they're literate, and we can assume that a lot of them are on social media, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, that kind of a thing. So that's a very cost effective to reach out to them and engage with them. If you're trying to talk to a mother who doesn't understand Portuguese in a remote area where she has no access to television, then you'd have to think of a completely different strategy, So it really depends on what you can do and who you're trying to do it with, Obviously, if you look at best practices from the private sector or even from the public sector or nonprofit campaigns, they will try their best to saturate the media. So you will have TV spots on television, you will have celebrities endorsing your message or your product, you will have out-of-home media, billboards, posters on the streets, you will have maybe special events or contact drives that again allow people, especially influential people, right? So you really try to get data on, okay, if I talk to Naysan, I've just talked to Naysan, but if I talk to John Doe, he's really influential and he has a network, and if I convince him, he will go out and advocate for my campaign. So you try to find those types of influencers. For us, for example, an example is religious leaders who have influence amongst a congregation of people who will listen to them and trust